Okay, I am back with another plot holes video from in the 100. I'm going to keep the introduction for this one short. When I did my first plot hole videos list, I wrote down a little over a dozen plot holes and picked just the 10 ones that bugged me the most about the first 5 seasons of the 100 in preparation for season 6. And I said I'm going to do the same thing again here, but this time I only have 8 plot holes. And some of them were the ones I had on the list I didn't include the first time. A couple of them were new ones I didn't even think about from the first time. And I have a couple from Season 6. Now, I want to preface this by saying, for the Season 6, I had a few plot holes, but I'm only including 2. And they're the 2 I don't think are going to be addressed or resolved in Season 7. And I have one more key plot hole that is probably the most important one, but I'll get to that, or explain a little bit better when I get to that one in the middle of this video. So yeah, like I said, I do love the 100. I'm anticipating Season 7 coming out next week, and, but even then, I'm one of those people that just likes to look at both the good and the bad of every show or movie. That's why I don't really have, like, a least favorite or a favorite film or show, because I'm just one of those people that looks at every factor, good and bad, for a show. And I just feel like it's important to acknowledge some of these issues with a show. But like I said, with a couple of exceptions, most of these are not as big as the ones I had from the last plot holes video, but I still want to talk about them before Season 7 starts, since it'll be the last season of the show. So, like I said, keeping the introduction short for this one, so let's just get into it. Here are 8 more plot holes in the 100. Okay, plot hole number 1. What happened to all the forgotten characters? So, in this show, a lot of characters kind of just got written off and just disappeared without any real explanation as to what happened to them. Presumably, since most of them have not appeared in at least 2 seasons, they're dead, but we're never explicitly told their fate as to how they died or when they died. And I want to also point this out, this is something that happens in a lot of shows. I mean, Lost, The Walking Dead, Game of Thrones. There are a lot of shows where this happens, just like certain background characters or minor characters just don't get renewed, their contracts renewed, they decide to leave, or they're just like there in the background, but then they just stop being there in the background. And it's like, this is something that happens in a lot of shows, but a show like this, we're following the last of the human race, although every season we find out there's another group of the last of the human race. Having just a bunch of minor characters just kind of disappear or just be killed off screen is a bit more of a problem, and I'm just going to go through a list of about a dozen characters that just kind of like what happened to them. So from the Sky People, we had Callie CC Cartwig, who was only in the pilot. Now, allegedly she died off screen, but we're never actually told exactly what she did to get floated. We got Nigel. There was the woman that I guess was like, not really sure what exactly her character was, like not really a mobster, not really but basically Raven went to her trying to get parts to fix the pod. She just kind of disappears. We had Reese Limpkin, Tor Limpkin's daughter. He was one of the people who sacrificed himself in the first culling on the Ark. We see the woman, I guess, who was like her stepmom or something, or Tor's girlfriend, in like a future episode or two, but we never saw Reese again. Kyle Wick. Now, his character, Steve Talley, I think is how you say his last name, there was some behind-the-scenes bullying and racism, I think, around the end of Season 2 and throughout Season 3. That's why his character was just written off. But we're never really told what happened. Allegedly, he and Raven broke up, but we're never really told exactly if he died or not. I mean, my headcanon was he was inside Mount Weather when it blew up in Season 3. We have McCallan, who was portrayed in just like one episode by Shawn Mendes. He played a song on the piano the Sky People took from the Mount Weather. But again, he's never seen after that. Now, allegedly he's still alive, but we haven't seen him. Now, I get it. Shawn Mendes, you can't get him back that often, but why introduce a character like him and have him be portrayed by a guest star for only one episode? We have Mel. She was the girl who was friends with Sterling. He died trying to save her, then Bellamy saved her in Season 2. Or was it Season 3? I don't even remember. But the point is, again, my headcanon is that she also may have died in the bunker, in the Mount Weather when it blew up. But again, she was only in like 2 episodes, and then she just disappears. We have Caspian. He was a Sky person that was in the desert with Jaha. He just disappeared. We had Brian, who was Miller's first boyfriend, sorry. He just kind of disappeared. Allegedly, he was left out of the Second Dawn bunker, but he's only seen like once or twice in season 4, and then he's just gone. And then we have Major Costa, who was like this recurring like background character for the first couple seasons, but then he becomes a minor character like in season 4. Again, allegedly, he was seen inside the bunker. My headcanon, he was probably killed off early on. And then we also have some grounded characters who just kind of disappear. We had Penn, Rivo, and Nia, I think is how you say her name, from the Tree People, who were all seen throughout season 2 and 3. We had Atoll and Karis, who were Ice Nation, and I think the Sand Grounders. I forgot how you say their name. They were, I guess, like other seconds who survived the missile from Mount Weather in season 2. But again, they all just disappeared. And there were some other characters, but I didn't want to have like a list of like over 20 characters who just kind of just were there and gone, but didn't actually die on screen. Like I said, this is just something that I just wanted to bring up. It's probably the most nitpicky thing I have on this list, but it's like, for a show like The 100, where you're following the last of the human race, having a bunch of characters like this just disappear without explanation is kind of more noticeable than other shows. But like I said, it's not really a plot hole, just a nitpicky thing I wanted to bring up. Okay, plot hole number 2. So, in the second half of season 2, Bellamy infiltrates Mount Weather by pretending to be a grounder when he and Lincoln, or well, Lincoln still pretending to be a Reaper, and Lincoln basically has him be captured with other grounders and are put inside Mount Weather, and we have that whole torture scene of Bellamy. And then, Maya helps Bellamy break out once she discovers he's actually a sky person, but they get caught by a Mount Weather guard by the name of Lovejoy. Now, the two of them, with the addition of Echo, work together and they kill Lovejoy, and then Bellamy takes his uniform and pretends to, and uses like his key card and weapons to like sneak around Mount Weather for a few episodes. And then we also see he has a change of heart wanting to kill everybody once he sees like Lovejoy's son and other little kids inside Mount Weather. Now, given what happens in the finale, it's kind of ironic and a bit sad, but nevertheless. But here's the thing. So, I don't remember if it was 3 episodes or 4 episodes after Bellamy kills Lovejoy, the Mountain Men realize that Lovejoy's been missing. So, they try and do like a search for Lovejoy, and I guess they find Bellamy wearing Lovejoy's uniform. And they realize that it's not Bellamy. I think, quote, almost word for word what one of them said. But here's the thing. Similar to the whole population issue I brought up with season 1 with the Sky People, Mount Weather has less than 400 people in it when season 2 begins. I think it was like 382, 384, something like that. So it's an even smaller population and an even smaller and more confined space. So how exactly was Bellamy able to, I guess, pull this off for a few days? Now, sure, we do have that one scene in the elevator with him and Maya, and then like a few other Mountain Men get in it. And I don't know, maybe they thought he was Lovejoy, maybe they didn't know who he was. But again, kind of same thing here. It's like, if you're stuck in this little bunker with a few hundred people your whole life, you would think you'd recognize everybody and know pretty much everybody by name. Now, sure, I don't know everyone in my neighborhood, despite the fact I walk my dog in my neighborhood all the time, but I don't see all my neighbors or, like, even people down the street every day. But Mountain Men, they're stuck inside the mountain together all their lives. So you figure, 1, people would realize he's not Lovejoy, or even 2, just not recognize Bellamy at all. And yet, Bellamy was able to pull this off for a few days. Now, true, he's mostly kind of like hiding and keeping to himself, but there are a couple times where he is out amongst the public at Mount Weather. So you figure people would realize, this isn't Lovejoy, or I don't know who this guy is. I don't know, I just feel like this is just something that did bother me a little the first time, but it wasn't enough to put on the first plot of the video. But again, how did Bellamy just dress as Lovejoy for a few days and no one realized he wasn't Lovejoy? You figure the Mountain Men would have discovered this, but with all the other issues I brought up in the first plot of the video with the Mountain Men, I mean, it's just, this one is a little bit less bothersome, but still something worth bringing up. Okay, plot hole number 3. Admittedly, this is probably the one that bothers me the least of these 8, but I just didn't want the video to be an odd number, so I kind of added this one in at the last minute just to get it to 8. So, how exactly did the 12 Grounder clans form? So, here's the thing. We are basically given the backstory throughout seasons 3, 4, and 5, though mostly 3 and 4, that all of the Grounders are the descendants of Bill Cadigan and the Second Dawn bunker inhabitants. And when Allie destroyed the world the first time, we had maybe 1,000, 1,200 people of the Second Dawn inside Cadigan's bunker, which was in the middle of Polis. So then Becca comes down from space, and she basically helps them all, I guess, giving them the night blood serum, and they basically are able to adjust living on the Earth. And I'll get back to Becca in a minute with another plot hole, but essentially within a century, there are between 15 and 20,000 Grounders. And I think I said this in the first video. I don't remember if it was a Facebook post or a tweet, but someone who works for the show once said, I think answering a fan question, by the time the show begins, there are 12 Grounder clans and between 15 and 20,000 Grounders. I think this was like right after Season 1 ended, or like right at the beginning of Season 2. Now, I've been unable to find that picture again, but I did save it before to my computer, but I think I accidentally deleted it when I was trying to clear off some space on my computer a long time ago. But that's neither here nor there. So, back to the plot itself. Within a century, we had tens of thousands of Grounders and 12 different clans, with Ice Nation and the Woods clan being the biggest, and they were at war, and then we had the other 10 clans kind of having to pick sides of how they would basically be involved or not involved with this war. And, allegedly, since the show takes place along the East Coast, after, I guess, the people of Second Dawn bunker were able to adjust living on the surface, they kind of spread out across the United States. But, again, the plot hole is, how exactly did we get 12 distinct clans of Grounders? I mean, I could buy maybe after a couple of decades of being stuck basically outside in the city area where the Second Dawn bunker was, I could see maybe smaller factions wanting to spread out and trying to repopulate around the United States. But 12 different clans in a century, and this kind of goes back to something I said in my first video, where about half these plot holes I feel could be somewhat more explained if it had been a century and a half, 2 centuries, rather than just 97 years. But, again, don't need to go over that again. I already discussed that whole plot hole in the first video. But, and here's the other reason why this one kind of bothers me, though, again, it's more nitpicky. At least with the Ark, 12 different nations form the Ark. So, and you could make the argument that maybe some of the more technologically advanced, or maybe the countries that had more people living already in space, were like the dominant primary stations of the Ark, and then you had maybe like the smaller nations that were kind of like seen at the bottom rung of society on the Ark. But we're never really actually, and so like that explanation kind of makes sense, how there's 12 nations and how there's like this hierarchy of the Ark. But we're never really given the explanation as the origins for the 12 clans. Now, admittedly, you don't really need it. I mean, it's one of those things that, yeah, you're just told that there's this war between different Grounder clans, and some are kind of like in the middle or having to pick sides. You don't really need to know all 12 clans' origin stories. But because they all share the same origin story, their ancestors were from the Second Dawn bunker, I feel like it is, again, a bit nitpicky, but we should at least be given an explanation how we got 12. I mean, if it was, say, 4 to like 7 Grounder clans, it probably wouldn't bother me as much, but the fact that we have 12, it just feels like, I don't know, I feel like it's just kind of a harder pill to swallow, or a harder chip to swallow. Yes, I know I made that pun in the last video, I don't care. But yeah, like I said, this one's probably the biggest nitpicky one, just having the explanation for the 12 Grounder clans, but I didn't even think about this the first video, so I thought I would just include it in this one, just say I did. Okay, plot hole number 4. Now, before I talk about this one, I have to give a little bit of backstory to it. So, when I decided to make my first plot hole videos list, it was before Season 6 had started, and I was rewatching the show in preparation for Season 6. But when I was rewatching Season 3, I realized a plot hole that actually gave me the inspiration to do the first plot holes videos list. So, I made my list of about a dozen or so plot holes, and talked about the 10 biggest ones in that first video. Then, in preparation for Season 7, I rewatched the show again, so that way I could add on to the list and basically do another plot holes video. But I realized something. I forgot to write down the plot hole that inspired me to do the first video, and this is the plot hole I'm about to talk about, and it's arguably, at least in my opinion, the biggest plot hole with this show. So, yay, you get to hear me talk about it this time, despite the fact it inspired me to do the first video. Yeah, I didn't put it in the first video. Oh well. Okay, so here it is. Does Allie have complete mind control over people or not? Now, this one may not seem like a big plot hole, but give me a minute to explain why, and you'll see why I feel so stupid for leaving this one off the list. Or at least the first time. So, here's the thing. Allie's backstory. And before Season 3, Allie essentially is trapped inside the mansion. She's the AI that ended up launching all the nukes that started Apocalypse 1 and wiped out most of the human population. Well, Allie creates the chips. And when someone takes a chip, it takes away all physical and emotional pain and puts their consciousness, in a sense, in the City of Light. And part of the reason why she does this is to keep, in a sense, the human race alive. Especially since she sees down the line, there'll be another apocalypse when all the nuclear reactors melt down and wipe out most of the world, or make it uninhabitable. So she does it to keep the human race alive, and also, like, just to, in a sense, keep herself, I guess, powerful in a sense. But she also sees that there'll be a point where everything, including the mansion, will be destroyed. And she, like I said, she's trapped inside the mansion. So when Jaha comes down in his missile, she uses the drones to bring the missile, or maybe she mind-controlled grounders, we don't really know which one, to bring the missile to the mansion. And she uses the power source in the missile to be able to create more chips and be able to be outside the mansion. And using Jaha to chip essentially the rest of the Sky people and then all the grounders in Polis. Since before that, she only used the drones to go outside the mansion and kind of like maybe a couple of grounders to bring other grounders to the mansion. So, Allie, the way she works is she needs people to willingly take the chips. So, for example, a grounder can't force another grounder to just put the chip in their mouth and eat it. Like, they need to willingly take it. So it's free will, in a sense, to take the chips. But, as we see throughout Season 3, Allie will allow torture or mind control, or in a sense, the people that are chipped will torture themselves or other people to convince other people to take the chips. So like we see with Kane, he gets tortured in order to be convinced to take a chip. So, in a sense, you could argue, okay, so you have to have free will to take the chips, but once chipped, Allie has control over the decisions people make. So, for example, in the finale, or I think I don't remember if it was part 1 or part 2, Allie, who's controlling Abby, makes Abby try to kill herself in order to, I guess, in a sense, torture Clark. Now, Abby would never kill herself of her own fruition in order to hurt Clark, or even just in any real way hurt Clark, at least in a way she thinks that would actually legitimately be a worse thing for Clark. So in this case, okay, so no, Allie has to, I guess, or is mind-controlling people and has complete control over their actions. But then we also see some characters express free will or original creativity when they're within the City of Light. Like how they'll look. Like, if Allie had complete control, everyone would look the exact same, like wearing the same outfit. But then you have characters like Imori who choose to keep her deformed hand, or maybe Jasper when he's eating the ice cream. Like, he chose, like, that's how he would look and what he would do. So, again, it's a sense free will and how people, I guess, live in the City of Light. But my guess is, at the same time, Allie probably, because she takes away memories that make people sad, again, like, for example, Jaha forgetting Wells' death, or maybe Monty's mom forgetting her husband, maybe also Allie can make it so that no one ever has thoughts that would be, I guess, against her, like, no one would ever rebel against Allie. So again, how is it both free will and complete mind control? It can't be both, yet to me, this is the plot hole that bothered me the most. It's one of the few plot holes I noticed the first time I saw the show. Like, I noticed this when Season 3 first aired, and then it bothered me more when I watched Season 3 the second time in preparation for Season 6. But again, I forgot to mention this one in my first plot holes video, and it's arguably, at least in my opinion, the biggest plot hole. Now again, most of the plot holes I've talked about either in the first video or this video, the show kind of tries to explain, or either on-screen or off-screen, after the show ends, or even in a future season. And while this one is still another one of those that's kind of explained, to me this one doesn't make sense. Why would an AI like Allie allow people to have free will when it's convenience? To me, it would make it would just make more sense for someone like Allie to have complete control over people, and the chips, you would not need them to take them by choice. You could just shove them in someone's mouth and then bang, they're chipped. You don't need to have people have free will to take the chip or when they're inside the City of Light. Yet we see plenty of examples of this throughout Season 3. So like I said, this is probably, at least in my opinion, the biggest plot hole. Yet I somehow forgot about it. But hey, at least I talked about it this time. Okay, plot hole number 5. How did the radiation from the Death Wave / Apocalypse 2 only kill the humans in the Shallow Valley? So, Allie said at the end of Season 3 that 96% of the world would be uninhabitable after the Death Wave. Though, Allie was apparently wrong about this, and Shallow Valley, as far as we can tell, is the only part of the planet Earth that actually did survive the Death Wave. Now, this is actually 2 smaller plot holes I combined into one. One, how is Allie so wrong about that? But then also, how did Shallow Valley itself survive? Just create this one plot hole. So, eventually Clark, at the beginning of in between essentially Seasons 4 and 5, or like in that 6-year time frame, she tried going to the Polis, but it was basically covered in rubble from when the tower collapsed over the bunker. And she was about to kill herself after wandering the desert for several weeks when she finally found a bird, and the bird led her into the valley. And then she kills the bird. As she's exploring the valley, though, she finds that all the grounders from, I think it's Sangetta Crew, Shadow Valley, I don't remember how you exactly say it in Trig, but all the humans in the valley died from radiation, except for Maddie, who was a Nightblood. But how is it that every person in Shadow Valley died from radiation, but the animals and plants didn't? Now, I don't remember which episode it was, but someone said essentially it's like the Death Wave jumped over the whole valley. But if the radiation was strong enough to kill the humans, wouldn't the radiation also have killed off the animals and maybe affected some of the plant life? I mean, we see that Clark and Maddie, survive by hunting and fishing for 6 years, and they're able to eat wild berries that they find in the Shallow Valley. But again, the radiation only affected the humans and killed them off. It didn't do the same thing to plants or animals. I don't know why. Like I said, this one is a bit nitpicky since it was 2 smaller plot holes I combined, but it's kind of a weird form of radiation that only wipes out humans, but not animals. And even if the plant life was able to survive, I mean, we at least saw other examples of mutated wildlife throughout the first couple of seasons. You figure there'd be some other kind of mutated wildlife, but no, we didn't get any of that. So yeah, like I said, it's not really as big of a plot hole, but something I still feel should be brought up. It's just kind of a weird way the Death Wave worked. Saved this one valley, killed the humans, not the plants and animals. Plot hole number 6. So like I said at the beginning of this video, some of the plot holes I didn't have on my list when I did the first video, but when I rewatched the show again in preparation for Season 7, there were a couple I realized the second time. And this one was one of them. So, how did the Flame, or Allie 2.0, survive if Becca was burned to death? So, in Season 5, after Maddie basically is given the Flame, Allie 2.0, it's put in her head and she's basically the next commander. It kind of affects her for a couple of episodes, and she starts seeing visions of previous commanders, either from their point of view or them kind of giving her advice, for example, how to win the war against the religious prisoners. But one thing she sees, I forgot which episode it was, she sees Becca's death. Essentially, when Becca came down to Earth about 95 years before the pilot, with Allie 2.0 inside her head and with all the Nightblood, she was essentially the first commander. Now, we're not really exactly given the origin story as to what happened with Becca and the Second Dawn bunker, but assumingly, like I said in a previous plot hole for this video, once Becca came down, gave them the Nightblood, and helped the Second Dawn people slowly adjust to the surface again, it's kind of implied that Bill Cadigan, the leader of the Second Dawn bunker, and her must have had some sort of disagreement, or maybe he viewed her as a threat to her, leadership, since he was a cult leader, and I guess he and his followers burned her to death. And one of the last things Becca says to him is, "He's killing you. You think he's saving you, but he's killing you." And then she's burned alive. But if she's burned alive, how did the Flame or the Allie 2.0 survive? If Allie 2.0 was inside Becca's head when she was burned alive, wouldn't the Flame have been burned with her? I mean, it's possible it would have survived, but if she was burned alive, then how would the next commander have been able to get inside their head? And if she already took it out and put it in someone else's head who was inside the Second Dawn bunker, then how would it see Becca's death from her point of view? Unless somehow the Allie 2.0 was still able to see both her brain and the next commander's brain as well when she died. But again, it's one of those things that were never explained, and I didn't really even realize this one the first time, but I guess I noticed it the second time. And like I said, this one's kind of one you can overlook, but it is still something that is interesting to bring up. Now, since the Flame essentially was destroyed in Season 6, we're probably never going to be given the explanation for this. But it is still something to bring up, because it's like, if it's the Flame that basically is what allows someone to be the commander, how did it basically survive inside Becca when she died? And if it was taken out, then how did it see Becca's death? I don't know. Maybe I'm overlooking it, or maybe this is just one they kind of need to give an explanation for, but from what we're shown, this one is a little confusing. Okay, plot hole number 7. And like I said at the beginning of the video, plot holes 7 and 8 were the two I decided to talk about for Season 6. But while I had like 4 for Season 6, I decided to only bring up the ones I felt probably aren't going to get addressed in Season 7. So, plot hole number 7. So how did the people of Sanctum repopulate after Russell did during the first eclipse? Again, this one was kind of like 2 smaller ones and combined into one. So, Allegius 3 mission was to send groups of scientists and their families to the 5 worlds to search for fuel, but also to essentially repopulate, create human colonies on other planets. And from what we have been told, each of the 5 colonies were given a set of 1,000 embryos, which had, I guess, Nightblood in them, created by Becca, and every member of the Allegius 3 also had Nightblood. So, all 13 members who were of Allegius 3 that landed on Planet Alpha all had Nightblood, and they were on Sanctum for like a few weeks before the first Red Sun. Now, before I talk about this a little bit further, I gotta give another thing of backstory. One thing we're told at the beginning of Season 6 is that Monty, before he died, after having cracked the Allegius 3 files, sent Allegius 4 to Planet Alpha because, as Bellamy said, it was the closest, but also the most Earth-like, despite the fact that it was in the Goldilocks zone of a binary star system. So, back to the plot hole itself. Or back to the first backstory for this plot hole. So, during the first Red Sun, which is when the 2 suns are eclipsing, as we see throughout Season 6, when the Red Sun happens, it causes people to go crazy, regardless of if they have Nightblood in them or not. And Russell kills his wife, his daughter, and several other primes during the eclipse. Now, we're never really told exactly how many he killed. We know he killed at least Riker and Priya and probably a couple of others, but the Red Sun eclipse lasts for 2 days. And if what we're told is true, and Sanctum is the most Earth-like of the 5 planets, then allegedly things like a day, a year, gravity, and other factors like that are probably close. So maybe about 365 days for a year. So if the Sanctum or Planet Alpha goes around the 2 suns in an elliptical orbit, that would mean there's 2 solar eclipses a year, or about 1 every 6 months. So, after the first Red Sun, and Russell had killed most of the 13 primes from Planet Alpha, he realizes what he did, and he makes it his life's work to find a way to use the memory drives, which also were created by Becca, in order to bring his wife, daughter, and the rest of the primes back. And after about 25 years, he realizes the way to do it is to mind wipe a Nightblood from the embryo, put the chip in, or the mind drive inside their head, and then his wife, daughter, and other primes basically take over that person's body. So here's the issue I have, and it's another population issue. Even with the explanation of having the embryos, how exactly did the population of Sanctum reach the way it did? Now, sure, it's an extra century or so compared to the Sky People and the Grounders, and we're never really told specifically how many people there are, but presumably it's in the few hundred range by the time we get to Season 6. But if most of Aegis 3 on Alpha was wiped out by Russell, how do they have enough people to repopulate? I mean, there were, what, maybe 6, 7 women, and Russell killed probably half of them in the first Red Sun. And if 6 months later there's another Red Sun, sure, maybe after a few Red Suns, eclipses, they figured out, oh, okay, so maybe if we go underground, maybe if we use the plant or animal life to help us, I guess, like, adjust to the Red Sun, we won't go crazy again. But even then, it's like, in order to repopulate, something similar to what I said in the first plot hole, all the women who are left would essentially have to be pregnant again and again and again. Because the embryos, being a Nightblood is a recessive trait, as we're told. I don't remember in which episode of the show. So if someone is a child of a Nightblood and a non-Nightblood, then there's a good chance they won't be a Nightblood. And that's also why throughout Season 7 we're told, or Season 6, sorry, the oblation, and then also like the offering grove for children, and then what leads to the children of Gabriel, because all these people can't be Nightbloods after Gabriel destroys the remaining embryos. But again, if Russell killed the majority of the original 13 members of Aegis 3 within a month or so when they first get on the planet, and if the Red Sun happens, again, presumably at least a couple of times a year, I don't know, I feel like this one is also similar to the issue with the population of Season 1, where it just doesn't seem to work. And, while this one I can kind of overlook a little bit more compared to Season 1 in that we get more time, the fact we start off with an even smaller amount of people is a little bit hard to believe as well, but I already talked about talked about Season 1's population problem enough. This was just basically the same thing, but just kind of switched around with some of the issues. So yeah, like I said, it is still kind of hard to believe the population could reach the way it does, but the fact that so many of the original Alpha team is wiped out by Russell, how they're able to adjust so quickly and repopulate so quickly is kind of hard to believe. Alright, and finally, number 8, the other plot hole I have for Season 6. So, did no one ever try and question the Primes before Gabriel formed his cults, the Children of Gabriel? So, like I said, number 7, when a Prime is to be brought back in the body of a host, the mind of the host is wiped for the Prime. And because the host has Nightblood, the memory drive is put inside the host, and then they become the next Prime. So like we see with Delilah at the beginning of Season 6, her mind is wiped, and Priya's memory drive is put inside her head. So she becomes Priya, and everything about Delilah is wiped. Now, here's my thing, though. Jordan, sure, he only knew Delilah for 2 days, but he at least tries to question some things about their faith and like how the whole mind-wiping thing works. Then he, Bellamy, and a couple other people realize, okay, so like basically the Primes are just killing people and taking their bodies to live forever. But my question is then, even with the Primes observing hosts for years, did no family members ever question this faith, or like why the Primes don't seem to have any memories of the family member that they took over? So, like, for example, in the early years, presumably before this was the, I guess, religion of Sanctum, I guess, Russell, when he was wiping the minds of hosts to convince them, he was trying to convince them that, oh no, this is a good thing. Like, your child will basically be sharing the memories of this Prime. But I don't know, I feel like, did no one else question it? Like, for example, we are given a few, I guess, explanations that kind of answer this plot hole, but they're still a bit questionable. So, for example, Riker tells Raven, like, he kept certain artifacts from, like, his second and sixth hosts, and he would spend time with the families of the hosts he took over their bodies. And I guess maybe if the Primes study the people that they're going to take over for many years, I guess they know enough. But did no other family member was like, hey, do you remember this time when maybe a Prime wasn't around, you and I did this? And then the Prime would be like, no, I don't. Or they'd be like, yeah, kind of, but tell me a little bit more. Like, no one on Sanctum ever questioned, like, this faith before the people from Earth came and kind of, like, realized, oh, yeah, your loved ones are being one with the Primes. They're being killed for the Primes. But then also this leads to one of the little part of this plot hole. It's like, when Gabriel decides to stop being immortal, he decides to kill the embryos, and Riker helps him escape Sanctum, so he could go off in the woods by himself, and probably babies that are left to die in the woods, he saves them, they get raised to be children of Gabriel. Maybe he convinces a few people inside Sanctum to leave with him, and they become children of Gabriel once he tells them the truth. But my question is then, why didn't Gabriel just kill the 12 Primes instead of the embryos? Because he destroyed the remaining embryos in order to stop, I guess, the Primes from taking over the bodies of hosts who have night blood, but then all that did was just lead to Josephine doing the oblation and, I guess, trying to control the population in order to ensure there'd be more hosts, even though by the time we get to the show, there's only 2 that don't have a Prime in them yet. But yeah, like I said, it's just like, no one ever tried to question, basically, this religion that the Primes created just to convince hosts that it's okay. We take over your body, you don't need to question it, and families don't question it either, because you're just, I don't know, I just feel like this is just, like, a lot to, like, kind of, like, overlook, in a sense, to accept that, oh, okay, your family member became one with the Prime. It's like, and yeah, we get a lot more time, like an extra century or so, compared to, like, certain religions that form, basically, with the Ark, with the Rounders and stuff like that, but I don't know, I just feel like this one, a little bit hard to understand, but since there's only 2 Primes left, Russell and Gabriel, I doubt we're ever going to get an explanation for this one or even the previous plot hole I talked about. But if they are addressed in some way in Season 7, cool. But if not, oh well, it's not a big deal. It's just still something I feel like should be brought up. Alright, and that's it for this plot holes video. Season 7 should be starting next week. Looking forward to it. I don't know if I'll do another one of these videos after Season 7, but if I do, it probably won't be that much left to talk about. But if you watch this video as well as the last one, hey, thank you for that. I really appreciate your viewership. Please give this video a like. If you haven't already, please subscribe, and leave the comment in the comment section below, and hopefully I can get back to you on that. Keep watching my videos. I really appreciate your viewership, and have a good day. And if you love the show, hey, don't let my opinions on some of the issues, like, distract from the fact I do love the show. I'm just saying, I just feel like these are issues that should be addressed. But hey, I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to what I had to say. Have a good day. Take care.